Mr. Truck here. I'm somewhere in Oregon, right next to Washington State. There's a river called the Columbia right there in the middle. We've been driving all over. Today I've been driving the Explorer 2020 Limited with the hybrid. And electric motor behind a gas engine, and then there's the all-wheel drive transfer case, and all that's on there. But they've got 3 different engine choices. They all have 10-speed. Today, this is what we're driving. 3 different trailers we're going to tow tomorrow, so we'll get some outside pictures of that, and I'll tell you how I think it does with the trailer. They go all the way up to 5,600 pounds down to 5,000 pounds on the hybrid for trailer capacity. Join me for the rest of the review.
If you have a short bed truck, you know it's not easy to hook up to a gooseneck. Pop-Up came out with these extensions from 9 inches to 16 inches to keep you from breaking out your back window when you're pulling a gooseneck trailer. And everybody uses a short bed. That's the most proper truck there is a crew cab short bed. So protect that window.
It is a liquid-cooled lithium-ion battery that is packaged under body. So the advancements in the technologies allows us to have a smaller package of overall package length of the battery than we've had in past generations, and a lot of work went into the system design and layout of the underbody such that we could package the battery as well as you're not seeing from the exhaust and puts it back into the coolant. And what that allows us to do is warm the engine up quickly, allows us to get your climate conditions the way the customer is requesting from the vehicle. So we feel that that is one of the key elements that we've added to this vehicle for fuel economy purposes. And then
point to those components, and do they look like a heat exchanger? Or?
It is a heat exchanger, right? So unfortunately, it's on the other side of this, but it is what you're saying. It's a it's on the other side.
That's our exhaust.
Okay, sorry. Thanks, Jeff. Okay, so it's a system that's an active system that has heat exchanger, just as we mentioned, as well as a valve that allows us to do active control of the heat recovery. So we can put it in bypass mode or active mode, depending on the conditions that the vehicle is in for climate, as well as ensuring that you're maximizing your fuel and
How do you cool the batteries? It's liquid cooled. Does it go through a...
it has a cold plate.
Okay, that's like that fins on it and all that stuff?
Yeah, it's a heat transfer mechanism or a removal mechanism.
That's air flowing by it?
It's liquid flowing by it, keeping the cold plate cold.
Okay, so a pump that recirculates the fluid?
The whole system has a pump, right? So it's on a for electronics that is commanding the cold.
And what's your name?
Oh,
yeah, I didn't pronounce that.
All right, so
How much does that component shorten cold start times, and is a cold start required by the system?
shorten cold start time. So it's for cold conditions, it's not really cold start times. It's about managing the overall temperatures of the coolant system. So let's not run the engine just to warm the coolant. So that's really kind of the purpose of how we do it. So we look at times for how long, where did that enable us to shut the engine off? So that's why it's related to a fuel economy key element, because we don't want to burn fuel just to be warming up the coolant. So this gives us a chance to recover some of that waste heat, put it back into the coolant, and advance our fuel economy, as well as get to cabin comfort for the customer as quickly as possible.
It's more a matter of getting to the efficiency point faster so that you minimize your viscous drag losses and so forth.
But there's a cold, on the FTP, there's a cold start section right at the beginning of the FTP is crucial for the mission.
Yep.
So you're using it for that.
So Jeff, you want to jump in about the cycle?
Yeah.
So there's a 70-degree the FTP cycle, and we use this system to get the engine coolant up to speed, up to temperature as quickly as possible. Because it's a very critical time when the engine's warming up and the catalyst system up here is warming up, that we have to get as efficient as possible. And efficiency means getting that coolant up, getting that catalyst heated, and then shutting the engine down as quick as possible. And the exhaust gas heat recovery allows us to get the efficiency quicker, get the cat warmer quicker, use less fuel, and then shut that engine down as quick as possible. Because the longer we have the engine on, the more fuel we're using. There's also a 20-degree requirement that's mandated. It's the same cycle, but at 20 degrees out. And that's where this system shines, really shines, and really takes over too. The colder you go, the quicker it helps you, right? It saves fuel.
So that's on the cycle, but from a customer perspective, it's like just because it's a little colder outside means I shouldn't have to give up some of the fuel economy the hybrid offers me. So I want to make sure that we're giving the maximum fuel economy that we can to the customer over all their use cases.
Does that also give you quicker heat coming out for the passenger compartment?
Right, so it gives you that cabin comfort, gets you up to the temperatures that we would want for the climate.
Any particular reason you're only putting it on a hybrid? It doesn't seem like there's anything here that's used to using electric.
It becomes a fuel efficiency item that is maximized on hybrids. So that's one of the reasons why we end up using it on the hybrid systems. Because of that hybrid sensitivity to the cold helps us get that fuel economy regardless of outside.
You said there's a cooling plate in the battery. Is it like a multi-effect thermocouple type plate, or are you using something else?
We know the temperature of the battery.
Yeah.
There is a thermocouple.
I'm not sure what his question is.
What produces cooling?
It's a liquid cool. So we are plumbing liquid cooling through it, and it goes through a low temp radiator, and there's a whole system that's supporting that liquid cooling in the battery.
But is there a plate to the function?
Yeah, so for dissipation, for heat dissipation, it's got to cool.
And in extreme temperatures, we use the refrigerant to cool and chill.
Yeah.
So we have an electric AC system.
Good point. Yeah.
So in very hot temperatures, southern Texas, Arizona, real hot, and the coolant part of the what we just mentioned isn't sufficient enough, then we turn on the chiller. And the chiller takes over and adds additional cooling capacity and dissipation capacity.
Is this battery's cooling system completely independent, or is it shared with the power electronics or any other
Yeah,
components?
so it's shared with the power electronics of the system, not shared with the engine coolant. So speaking of the engine coolant, maybe we can go up and talk a little bit.
What the coolant actually comes in.
Yeah, go ahead, show that.
Oh, sure. So this right here, you can see there's some cooling lines that come in and out, and the power electronics are also cooled by that same loop. And we know the temperature of this device too, so we can actively manage. And we don't want to turn that chiller on unless we have to, because of course it uses more energy. So we don't want to waste, and we don't want to be cooling it, overcooling it. We want to keep it at the right temperature, and we manage that whole system. The customer doesn't have to do anything.
So lots of calibration work from Jeff's team to make sure that we are delivering an optimal solution that gives you the fuel economy that you want and keeps the operation matching your driver demand. So I'm going to switch over and talk a little bit about the overall performance of the vehicle. So in the 2020 all-new Explorer, for this hybrid system, we have started with a 3.3 naturally aspirated V6 engine, and we've paired it with the e-motor that you see in the cross-section. And Andy's going to take you a little bit more detailed review of the hardware. But having that pairing of the e-motor and the engine gives an augmented performance that gives an overall total system performance of 318 horsepower and 322 foot-pounds of torque. So that's taking your engine performance, your e-motor performance, looking at it over an RPM range and saying what are those peak values. And so if you haven't driven it already, you're planning to drive it today, well, that's what you're seeing is that you've got a great performance, and again, no compromise in the performance of an Explorer.
And have you released the power and torque for the e-motor and the engine?
We haven't specifically listed that out in the spec sheets, but the e-motor is 44 horsepower and 221 foot-pounds of torque.
That's including the 318.
It is, but so I'm talking peaks on the e-motor, and one of the things I want to talk about on that peak is the torque that you're seeing for the peak of the e-motor happens at the lower RPM. which was really great because it helps fill in, like I said, it augments that performance. You get that great lower end torque at the RPM range paired with that engine, and then you're really feeling it. And for personally, when I'm driving the Explorer, what I'm feeling is that torque when I'm stepping into the vehicle, when I'm passing, and when I'm zipping around town. I think that's probably my personal favorite part of driving the vehicle, is just being able to zip around, and then when I want the performance, stepping in and getting that. So I think that's one of the key things. So we talked a little bit about the performance, and just want to reiterate for the fuel economy. Again, we're giving all the performance that you would want, but we're also trying to give you all the fuel economy that you would expect out of a hybrid. So we talked about the EGHR system. Andy's going to talk a little bit about the regen and how we actually get regen. And but one of the key items I want to mention to you is that we get over 90% recuperation of kinetic energy from the wheels back into our system. So that's a key enabler for some of our fuel economy.
A standard driving cycle, or how did you think of that?
So we're just looking at the max efficiency that we can get from the wheels to it. It's not a specific cycle. Yeah.
So out of the potential kinetic energy in most deceleration situations, you can recover up to 90%.
That's right. We always try to use regenerative braking first before the friction brakes. That's always the priority in terms of fuel economy.
So I would say that overall the system is optimized to always give you that performance you want, and then we're opportunistic in trying to capture any kind of fuel we want. We just want to grab all of it from whatever system we can, either EGHR enabling it or the regeneration system. We're always going to try to give you that fuel in addition to the performance. So just a couple of things I wanted to reiterate is like full cargo room. So if you look at the specs of the interior specs of the hybrid Explorer, it's going to be exactly the same as the non-hybrid. So again, if you want to move cargo, you want to move people, you're not giving anything up because you selected a hybrid. You're actually just gaining the fuel economy. And then we're giving you the performance, as I mentioned, about the horsepower and torque, and then the towing capabilities with 5,000 pound towing. So I think those are key elements. So that's a high-level overview. Andy's going to take you through a little bit more of the detail of the hardware of the transmission. So
That's good. That's good. I'm talking about my hybrid Fusion.
Yeah.
That first year that you didn't have a spare tire because of the battery.
Right.
Next year they changed that, so I'm glad you're not interfering with the space because that was a pain in the butt.
Yeah, so that's we heard that feedback. I mean, part of it is enabled by the battery technology, and as I said at the beginning, it's really been the Ford design philosophy of no compromise solutions with our hybrids.
Oh, that's cool. And you got bigger brakes this year, so you got more regenerative braking.
Well, we try to. The goal is we don't want to use this unless you have to.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
The whole idea is to try to capture as much possible energy via the e-motor and the battery.
Yeah, because it used to be that was quite a bit of it in the old days. In the early days of hybrids.
Too, right? So we could have longer brakes as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Cool, thanks.
Take the 10-speed transmission. That torque converter comes out. This module then slides in and replaces it. So it's still torque converter based. But what you're looking at is you've got the stationary assembly, which is the casting of the module, and the stator assembly of the motor. These remain stationary. So it mounts to the rear face of the engine block, front face of the transmission. Right? So we assemble the module right into the transmission. The whole transmission is shipped and goes to the assembly plant. Right? Now, what's giving us this capability is we've got a disconnect clutch that's embedded inside the electric motor that's managing the connections between the electric motor and the engine itself. So there's 4 distinct drive modes that you can have given this architecture. You can have engine only, where we're driving the engine, engine's on just like you would normal. You can disconnect the engine, engine's shut down, and you'll see that when you drive. You go to 0 RPM, you're driving e-motor only. Right? The third one is you have the ability to drive with the engine plus add some horsepower and torque from the electric motor. So that's what Katangeli was talking about, the ability to stack it, right? And use some of the advantages of an electric motor at the lower speeds before the engine hits its optimal operating point. And then the final 4th mode is when we're talking about regen energy. We're talking about taking the kinetic energy of the vehicle coming to a stop and slowing down, we're now using the motor as a generator, spinning in the windings, feeding back high voltage energy then to the battery. Okay? And
Is the system at times using regen with and without that clutch?
that's
engaged?
correct. That's correct. Yep.
And it
We're able to
decides
arbitrate.
depending on the situation.
Yep. And we also, I'd like to point out, we do include a torque converter in this system, and that's key because when we're using this for our large SUVs and trucks, it's now customer based. What are they doing with it? What are they towing with it? Right? So what's a key enabler? Torque multiplication of the torque converter and the damping that comes with that when you're trying to get the proper feel with the trailer. Okay. I'll take you here. I'm going to take you full circle now. We'll go back to the architecture.
Was that challenging to calibrate a system that uses both an electric motor and tip in plus a torque converter? That sounds
That's why we have experts like that.
What's nice is Angeli is our overall systems manager for hybridization. I am our hybrid transmission manager for all of our hybrid transmissions, and then Jeff has our calibration. There's a reason why the three of us are standing here together. We spend an abnormal amount of time together, which is awesome.
Wonderfully.
Well, the stuff that you're talking about, is it difficult? Yes, of course. Very challenging, but I think you'll see when you drive it.
It's not even countable. Well, it's countable, but it's not something we keep track of anymore. It's a finite number, but it's extremely large.
We are obsessive about the performance and about the fuel economy, not the number of lines of code that it takes to deliver that.
I think what's important too is, we talked in the beginning about what is the customer trying to do with the vehicle and how do we want it to behave. That's the guiding light. And as long as we keep that in front of us, how we arbitrate and how we manage those conditions, it actually becomes very clear. The execution of it becomes very clear because we know what we're trying to accomplish. So one thing I'll point out is here in the cutaway, we talked about the base transmission. We talked about the module that makes it a modular hybrid. If we come back into the vehicle, you'll now see that's the front face of the trans mounted to the engine. You've got the electric motor. We have the copper windings. We have a spray bar that comes up at the top and the fluid comes down, our trans oil fluid comes down, cools the windings. We use a baffling system to divert that warm fluid back into the sump to be cooled just like anything else in the transmission. So it is a wet environment, but to optimize and lower any type of rotating losses of the fluid, we use that baffling system to redirect, right? And that just is very, very effective at minimizing our drive losses, right? 35 kilowatt motor, disconnect clutch embedded inside, torque converter, and then we move on with the rest of the common system.
Can you tell me more about that clutch? What kind of clutch is it? Is it the same clutch that I might find in an all-wheel drive system, for instance?
I don't know how I would compare the two of those. I'm looking at Jeff, but
The question is,
What
we don't
kind of
slip
clutch?
put it that way. It's always either on or off.
Yeah.
We don't want to slip it from a durability standpoint.
Yeah.
It's not made to do that. It's not like a DCT where you're constantly wanting to slip and duty cycle that. That's where the converter comes in. And for fuel economy, we try to make sure that that converter is locked as much as possible.
It's just on or off.
It's on or off. Okay. And then that's where the blending between what's engine on versus engine off, that clutch, and how you apply that clutch, when you apply it, is very critical to make a smooth driving experience.
So the torque converter will lock up all the gears maybe first, just like normal.
Sorry?
The torque converter will lock up any gear, like lock up like on a regular transmission.
At lower speeds, at very, very low speeds, we don't lock it up. So it's for
Right, so like first or second or
But
whatever.
at any time we can do it for fuel economy or regenerative braking, we keep that converter locked.
Right, right.
It appears as though the combination of the torque converter and the electric motor is a lot deeper, wider, whatever, than just the torque converter. So does that mean that everything in the driveline has to be moved back?
It is overall length is longer, so it's about 160 millimeters. That's longer. But when we designed the Explorer platform, and you tangentially talked about it being the systems integration, we accounted for that. Because you can imagine just by looking at it, you're taking that cone and you're sliding it rearward. So now how do we optimize in the system here so the customer doesn't see that or feel that in their usage space? And so this whole area, how we route the exhaust for heat, how we ran the drive shaft, how the transmission is fit in, that was the systems engineering portion to make sure that we had all that accounted for correctly.
I went to the police interceptor event last week, very informative, and they were talking about, there was two things I think I've got written down somewhere else, but with a constant draw, I think they were saying that they only need to run the gas, whereas a regular gas engine would have to idle for 2 hours. There was a cycle where the gas engine would only have to run maybe 20 minutes out of every 2 hours to keep it charged. You mentioned that it has electric powered air conditioning. I think we're all from Michigan, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm from Chicago. So roughly 11 and a half months out of the year, you have to use heat. Is there a combination for that when the officer is just sitting at the side of the road, the engine's not on, so you're not creating any kind of, is there a supplemental heater, electric heater or something?
We don't have a supplemental heater on the full hybrid here. However, we won't sacrifice the cabin temperature. If the cabin gets too low, then we will turn the engine on and keep warming up. So
We would just consider that another demand
Yep.
for the system to optimize for, make sure we meet that driver want
So
for
if-
cabin comfort.
If you start turning up the temperature, then we'll realize, okay, we need to achieve a higher set point, so we will turn on the engine.
Did you, the same team, work on plug-in hybrid?
So we'll talk a little bit about the modularity. Andy, sometimes you, in the past, you mentioned a couple of times about the mounting being the same. Why don't you mention that, and then we'll talk a little bit about the scalability.
So, two things to keep in mind. If we look at some of the lug points or the manufacturing mounting points, they're common between our base 10-speed and our MHT, and that gives us that flexible manufacturing that we talked about. We have an expectation of what the demand will be, of course, for all of our products that go out the door, but this gives us the ability to respond to demand ebbs and flows, and hopefully we have a whole lot of demand for the hybrids, and we're able to take advantage of that. When we talk about the different systems, when we talk about plug-in hybrids or base hybrids, what we start with is the vehicle level and say, what is the vehicle demand for which engine we pick or what size e-motor we pick, and then how do we match the battery and the electric motor voltage-wise. So this architecture then becomes scalable depending on what size that we need. Okay.
So why wouldn't I migrate this across the board?
So a couple things to keep in mind. Ford now has a portfolio that we're matching up to customers' needs. So we still remain with our power split technology, which is the ECVT, on our cars and our light SUVs. Now we start getting into the towing and the demand for the off-road and no compromise. Now we have an architecture that is transferable based on where we need it.
So we just said that, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
That the battery and the power systems are scalable. What is the capacity of this pack?
So the scalability that we'll mention is between the full and the plug-in. So we could scale energy for it. So this is, we don't really get into, talking energy on a full hybrid is not exactly as exciting as the plug-in.
But it's
a 1.5 kilowatt hours. But the key thing is it's a 35 kilowatt battery that's paired with that e-motor. And so when we scale for a plug-in, we will scale the e-motor. I also mentioned that we can scale the engine that it's paired with. So as we look to other applications, like we've announced the F-150 hybrid already, it will be employing the same modular hybrid technology, but it will be sized for that truck, for that use.
So that may have a 2-point-something kilowatt hour battery and a perhaps a higher power.
Really excited to talk to you about what we're going to end up putting in the hybrid for the F-150, but it'll probably be in 2020.
Oh yeah, that'd be cool. But that's to your point. So this system could be almost identical to what goes in the 150.
We have that
ability.
modular.
We have that ability.
So, but it is the same system that, from the powertrain perspective, it is the same system that we're doing on the police interceptor utility, as mentioned at the beginning. So it is police interceptor utility is a purpose-built vehicle, but it is from the powertrain perspective using many of the same components here. And going back to Rick, your point about the fuel economy for the long idles. So we see that and recognize that police tend to spend over 60% of their time in idle. So this is a great technology for them because we can deliver all that fuel economy. And one of the things that we look for is what are the aux loads, or what are the loading of the various devices the police are using, what are the climate control comforts that the police want, what's going on. We'll meet those, but it'll optimize the engine on and off and where we operate the engine to give that fuel economy during those long idle periods. And because it's police and it's an interceptor, right, so it's all about the performance. So when you step in and you need that performance, it's giving you that augmented performance of the e-motor in the engine. So if you need to pursuit modes or anything like that, there's a calibration that's been developed to maximize the use of the performance of both devices to give the propulsion that the police need.
How many volts is that?
So it ranges, but let's just say it's around 300.
So to take this line of thinking a step further, you talked about scalability, about the police version, about perhaps the scaling of future applications. You've already teased the power takeoff capability as being an item in the F-150. Has this been engineered from the start to have power takeoff capability and potentially in the future?
Yeah, so really happy that you remembered our tease about the power takeoff. So we think that for the F-Series customer, that's going to be an exciting feature for them. And this is a system that's going to will be used to deliver that. And it is we're going to try to go after as much modularity as we can, but we will meet the power takeoff needs that we feel that the customers for F-150 will want. And again, lots more information. I'll be excited to talk to you about that in more detail next year.
Wow,
Could you, for instance,
PTO.
put one on this vehicle without completely redesigning the power electronics? Or?
Correct. That's our goal.
So the 150's coming with PTO? Is that what you're saying?
Well, not your typical power takeoff like you would do on the side of the transmission.
Oh, yeah.
But so we're basically what we've recognized is we've seen our customers use one of the as we talked about beginning is that we want to really understand the customers, and we see customers putting portable generators in the bed of their truck. We're like, well, you know what? A hybrid technology can help you deliver that without having to buy that extra device and without having to take up the cargo room that it does. So that's one of the features that's as you mentioned that we've teased out already about that point.
Plus, you have a really long run time.
Oh yeah.
You've got all gas tank.
Yeah, right.
Well, that's so cool. Like in police cars, you have electric air conditioning, so you don't have to run the engine for that. So none of that stop-start crap. And then same thing for heater. You got to wait heating the cabin up. Is that the electric heater for that when the engine's off?
No, as Jeff mentioned, there's not a supplemental electric heater, but that's one of the reasons that we put
Okay,
in the
so
exhaust
then-
gas heat recovery system,
Yeah.
because if we're going to run the engine to do all of the expectations of helping with the warm-up speed and the climate comfort, we want to do that as efficiently as possible.
Okay, so somebody have to run the motor a little bit for the heater though. Okay.
And Ken, the police interceptor has the electric AC, but so does
Yeah, so it's
all the Explorer hybrids here.
Yeah,
Has
yeah.
the electric AC system.
Yeah, it's so nice that the thing shuts off. You don't know what's going on, but you don't lose your air conditioning like you do now with the stop-start. That's very nice.
But again, full hybrid, so it's going to give you a lot more than a start-stop system.
Oh yeah, cool.
Go back to fundamental hardware decisions. You mentioned that the torque converter, in addition to the motor system, that this layout was chosen to accommodate driveline shock and and the rigors of towing and heavy loads and that sort of thing. Did you contemplate what I might call light duty version of this transmission? One that kind of came with a much lower tow rating, and what was the sacrifice in terms of what kind of draw in fuel economy does having the torque converter there introduce?
I actually wouldn't characterize it as a sacrifice. I think it's an enabler. One of the things we wanted to make sure, like you said, is we started from the beginning, what will these vehicle customers need? And we know how they need to use it. That became a fundamental aspect of the architecture that we said we need to have that for their usage, and then we built around that. So I think that's been an enabler. When Jeff and I work and our teams work together, we're talking about how do we optimize the hardware set to minimize the losses, and then how do we optimize how we use it.
Yeah, our goal is to keep that converter locked as much as physically possible. Like you said, driveline shock. At the very low speeds, of course, we can't, because then it's almost like a manual transmission that you forgot to put the clutch in. But normal customer driving, we try to keep that converter locked absolutely as much as possible. but then in terms of a lighter vehicle, that's where the power split architecture comes in.
Right.
So instead of taking this and making 15 versions of this, right, you have a whole other power split architecture that meets those customer needs, where there's not as much towing or possibly not as much torque demand.
And lighter vehicles.
Lighter vehicle, smaller vehicles like the Escape.
So it would again just, well, if you were to, that's a different system entirely, but if you were to scale this system, it would again just require reevaluation, resizing.
We'll try to, from a modularity approach, we'll try to reuse as best we can and figure out what part of it do we need to scale to meet that demand.
The axle ratios and the axle the same as all the other Explorers?
No,
Hybrid?
this has so the rear. All I can tell you is the rear-wheel drive hybrid is a 358 final drive,
Okay.
and then the all-wheel drive system has a 373 final drive.
Okay, versus what's on the other Explorers?
I believe I can. We'll have to.
I guess I can look it up, yeah.
We'll have to ask.
Okay.
But there's different axle ratios on the 2.3s and the 3-liter turbos for their performance needs.
Well, that's a pretty good axle ratio for this. That's why you get the 4,000 to 5,000 pound towing capacity.
Can we talk? Parameters for this car for a second? Like, what is the maximum possible speed in electric only mode for this vehicle?
So we don't advertise a max speed.
Yeah. Because it's very much related to how
it's
you
very
drive.
driver dependent.
Yeah.
However, in the city, that is where it shines. Right? If you're doing 90 miles an hour, you've got a very large vehicle, and that's not where this vehicle shines, of course, in terms of e-mode only. What you'll find when you drive is in the city, that's when you're going to get your most electric only type driving.
We experienced around 50 miles an hour. Is that close to the max, or could it go a lot higher?
I would say no. It
That's
won't.
good that you got that.
Yes.
That's really buzz about.
Go
Did you
higher.
drive it yesterday? Is that what you got?
Yeah. So usually the range of 35 to 50, depending on how you approach that speed.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you step change your foot, you're not going to get to that 50. However, if you creep up on it, and as customers learn the vehicles, just like we have an Echo Coach, and we have the parameter in the display. I don't know if you saw the hybrid gauge.
Yeah,
on
you
the front. If you click through it,
Yeah.
right, you start learning how to approach those speeds and maximize your electric performance, even in a full hybrid.
I think to your question though, it's load dependent, driver demand dependent, as opposed to mechanically limited. It's not.
What we won't do though is we won't sacrifice. But when you get to a certain speed, we're not going to sacrifice the performance of the vehicle. If someone wants the power, we decide when we want to turn the engine on to meet that demand.
All while being opportunistic with our fuel.
Right. We don't want to turn it on too early, but we also don't want to upset the customer and turn it on too late, where they're not getting the performance that they want when they need it.
Which leads to the question of, this gets a little more specific of mine after having driven the vehicle. The modes all to me felt calibrated quite closely together. Did you consider making, say, the eco mode especially aggressive, where we felt like normal and sport were where they were, but maybe eco could have allowed even more of that e-motor torque to come through. Is that not to the benefit of fuel economy, actually? It's just one of those.
So I'm sorry. So in eco mode, what we tried, the whole purpose of eco mode is to try to not give the customer more than they need. People tend to sometimes tip into their accelerator pedal more than they need, then they back out. And then we've started the engine, and we're not being as efficient. What we're trying to do is, if the customer really wants that power, they have to dig a little farther into the pedal to get that. So we try to make sure that they don't overshoot what they really wanted. So we don't start the engine too early relative to what they want.
This all runs in oil? On the back, even the stator?
That's correct. This is a wet environment.
Okay.
So as we said, we're actually feeding fluid that comes down and it's raised through. And actually will be pumped from the inside out as well to cool it. our stator windings. And then we divert that hot fluid back in through the hydraulics into the sun.
Yeah, so the pump is somewhere back there. That's the pump.
The actual electric pump.
Oh, it's an electric. This is a 3-liter
And this is a 3-liter.
EcoBoost twin turbo.
Turbo EcoBoost that's massive.
Okay.
But what we have in there is a 3-liter.
Right. It's not on a stand. What's up with that? See that engine. Yeah, cool. This one from the ST is the 3-liter twin turbo. It's a 2.3 with 1 turbo. The base engine. Cool, the base engine, 2.3, single turbo. This is a 3-liter twin turbo EcoBoost. That's out of the ST.
Is that all that fuel efficiency that we have, in addition, on top of all the performance, is it does give us a fuel range of over 500 miles for this vehicle. So I like to think of it as 2 aspects of that. I'm not going to have to stop before the weekend, which is always a cluster for me personally. But also, you know, it's an explorer. I want to be able to explore. I don't want to keep stopping at that. I want to be able to go out into the world, do what I want to do, and come back and not have to worry about it.
And that's a 19-gallon gas tank?
Oh, jeez.
I believe it's 18.6.
18.6.
The exact figures.
So you take that and the electric motor divided by 500. What do you get from fuel mileage? What is it?
So
He's trying to get us the fuel label. So the fuel labels are not out. We're still working through
Breaking news, man. You make breaking
the
news.
500-mile range is EPA estimated. We're in the process right now of working with the EPA because we have to do our testing. They look at it, they look at our data, they test it too if they want to. So right now, that's why we're saying EPA estimated 500 miles on the rear-wheel
over
drive.
500.
On the rear-wheel drive application.
Right.
But we can't quote the exact number right now because we have to get agreement with the EPA.
If we could, we would. We'd be very happy to share it with you today. But
You're
still
pretty
going through the
excited about the
process.
results, man.
Well, what we can say is for the 6th generation Explorer, the hybrid Explorer is the most fuel efficient Explorer that we put out there.
And I would expect
I don't know.
that.
We intend to
Well, that's cool.
engaging or disengaging the rotating portion of it to the station or to the actual neutral shaft itself.
Okay, so you got some friction going on in there.
That's right.
What, 4 clutches?
Yep. So we have the ability to vary the clutch plates based on what application you're using. So the number of plates in here is just for display purposes, but we can vary the number in there based on the load carrying capacity that we're looking for.
Well, that's cool. Cool. Yeah, well, it's neat that it can do all that's automatically between engine and electric, all that.
We manage all of that through hydraulics. And as Jeff was describing, based on what drive mode that we're trying to utilize, we have the ability to engage or disengage, use the 4 modes, whether we're engine only, electric motor only, combine the 2, or take the regen energy back through the system and feed the high voltage battery.
Oh, that's cool. So you got the normal clutches and the torque converter, all the normal stuff, and then 1 extra. So, yeah.
Was that at the other event?
I don't remember.
Okay, transfer case, I'm not the expert in the transfer case. However, I can,
Well, what's the electric motor? Is that part of the turning management, or?
The electric motor has a torque path through this.
This one here.
But this right here helps with duty cycling of the clutches inside and how that operates. I'm not the expert in this.
Okay.
But
There's some clutches in here.
There's clutch packs
disconnect and all that.
and it allows the constant transfer of torque either to the front wheels or away from the front wheels.
Okay.
Its main path is to the rear wheels, and then it duty cycles power to the front.
Cool, because I see all the gears and they slide, and so that changes things.
Oh, thank you. So, yes, in terms of torque transfer, and there's percentages.
Is that part of the terrain management talks about?
Yes,
here?
yeah,
Okay.
train management is a new transfer case design. The idea is that the customer doesn't have to think about it.
Yeah, it's amazing how small these transfer cases are now.
Yep.
So this goes to the back drive shaft, and this is the front drive
Yep,
shaft.
and it gets duty cycled up here to the front.
seeing that on this side.
Yeah, this side. And so we work with the team.
That's a pretty robust chain. I'm surprised that's about as big as it is on a big truck.
Yeah, it is. It's very good size. I'm not here guys with cast iron here, but that all went away decades.
Here with Jeff Bobek. Okay, I get it eventually. What, you're an engineer, right? With Ford, what is it you're in charge of?
So my department does all the powertrain calibration for the not only the hybrid side of things, but the gasoline engine side of things, so the total package.
Too, in the all-wheel drive system, the front hubs, in the old days we had lockout hubs, we had all kinds of stuff, and now you got it's an electric
It's
disconnect.
called a front axle disconnect.
Okay, so it doesn't disconnect the hubs, it just disconnects the transfer case, or?
The whole idea is the front drive line is not back driving.
Okay, so that's axle and drive shaft?
So it's mounted underneath the vehicle. Obviously, it's right up near the front drive line system, and the whole idea
The
is
axle? Front drive system meaning the axle, or?
No.
Is it disconnect in the axle? Like I'm used to that, I know how that works, but it's something else.
Yeah. So it's effectively it's disconnecting the axle.
Okay.
I don't know all
okay.
the nitty gritty of it, but it's
Okay.
disconnecting the front driveline system.
Right, and it does that automatically?
And it does that automatically. It's
At
not
slower speeds, or I mean, how does that?
So
how does it know when to do it?
the biggest idea is trying for highway fuel economy,
Okay.
and you don't want to have all that extra drag. And
Right.
when you slow down the vehicle and do regenerative braking, any energy that you lose to drag in that whole front system is energy that you can't recuperate in the battery.
Okay.
So at lower speeds, in anticipation of a customer coming to a stop and taking off quicker, we don't want to have any delay in performance, and so it will, for the most part, at lower speeds, start locking up at lower speeds. So when the customer leaves the light and they punch it, we don't want to have a lag in and spin the rear wheels.
Oh,
and
yeah.
have the customer spending a lot of time
Right.
spinning rear wheels in an all-wheel drive vevehicle.
Oh, better traction system.
Better
to do that.
traction, yep. And then also if we start sensing icy conditions
Okay.
and things that we always want to push, the safety comes to the forefront, especially when it's icy, snowy.
Right.
So as you approach the freezing, that's where the front axle disconnect would be connecting back up again in an all-wheel drive vehicle.
Oh, cool. So is it 32 degrees or 10? How low is it? And
So-
where's the sensor at that decides all that?
I don't want to quote the exact temperature.
Okay.
However, we do have ambient temperature sensors in the vehicle,
Okay.
and then we use that information for a variety of reasons.
Oh, cool. That's cool. I mean, I like that. I mean, it seems you're getting some automatic. It's just like all the collision things. You can't hardly crash a vehicle anymore.
Right.
It won't
yeah.
let you.
Yeah. It won't let you. But the front axle disconnect was one more item that we try to go above and beyond to try to be able to recoup every bit of regen braking as possible. Because anything that's lost in the drive line, you can't recoup that energy in the battery.
Oh, that's good. That's good. That should be a big improvement on fuel mileage. I can hardly wait to get the EPA number, so I know if it's 20 or 25 or whatever it is.
Yep,
I can
we're
just
excited too.
speculate.
we're excited too. We've been working
Cool.
hard at it.
Yeah, I'm glad to see tow haul mode on these vehicles. So now, does it have for the towing, for the ones that are all-wheel drive, actually any of them, does it have a special cooler for the transmission for towing? You know, like tow packages do?
Yes. There is a special cooler, and Andy can show you where that. Excuse me. Andy can show you where that is. But we do have an external trans oil cooler.
I like that. I mean, that's the problem I've ever had my whole life towing with automatic transmissions. If you don't have it cooled, if you don't have some external or some extra cooling, you got problems.
And we did pass. If you notice in some of the literature, there's the SAE standard for towing.
Right. Oh, so
In your literature.
2807, you got that one in there? Cool.
The hybrid passes that.
Okay.
In terms of the rigors of the simulated Davis dam rooms.
Cool. Sounds good. Well, I got to catch my next ride. Thanks.
Okay, enjoy.
Talking about cooling for towing trailers. That's a big deal to me. And this is rated, this hybrid, at 5,000 pounds. I'm sure all of them have a cooling system, an external cooler, and it's underneath the cabin. And that's the airflow through. Is it fin kind of the system, or
The heat exchanger is actually up front.
so that's where it gets cooled up front?
That's correct.
Front of the radiator, probably.
The actual exchange of coolant and oil, that exchange is down.
Okay, cool. That's what's the big thing with towing is I want to keep that transmission nice and cool. If we climb mountains and we don't want to, overheat that. That's the only time I've really had big problems with transmission is when I overheat and pulling trailer without it.
You're not going to have that problem. 5,000 pound tow rating with our new
Oh, that's awesome. I'm going to tow with the vehicles next.
That's
Cool.
right.
Thanks.
Yep, no problem.